Now, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome our second guest of honor for the day, Professor Dr. Meenal Sharma Jagtap, Joint Director at National Institute of Labour Economics Research and Development, NITI AAYOG, Govt of India. Professor Dr. Meenal Sharma Jagtap is a PhD in Applied Economics with over 16 years of experience across a range of verticals. She has been associated with university teaching in multinational and cross-cultural teaching environments. Prior to this, she worked as professor and head management and commerce at Trinity Institute of Professional Studies affiliated to Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, Delhi. She has also worked as Associate Professor and Program Coordinator, School of Economics and BBA at MIT University for more than 5 years. Dr. Meenal Sharma Jagtap regularly publishes in reputed national and international journals. Her articles also appear in leading newspapers and periodicals at regular intervals. Ma'am is also an avid reader, writer, and blogger with a keen interest in leading skill building and training programs. Her book, titled Monetary Policy in India, Theory and Practice, has been well received in the academic circle. We are honored to have you with us today, ma'am. May I now request Dr. Meenal Sharma Jagtap to address the participants. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction. Wishing very good afternoon to the management of Babu Banarsidas Chandiwala Institute of Management, all my esteemed panelists and other participants of this very pertinent discussion on the startup ecosystem in India. First and foremost, I would like to extend a big thank you to the management of the institute for making me part of this prestigious event. So students who have joined us in big numbers, today I'm going to talk about the role of new age startups in India, their features, their role in the Indian economy. To start with, I would like, yes, thank you. Just move to the slide number 1. Yes, thank you. So students, 2021 was a defining year in startup ecosystem in the country. Investments in startups were a defining feature of 2021 because the private investors, they committed over $30 billion to Indian startups as compared to $11.5 billion invested in 2020. So you can see the big leap which occurred in the year 2021. Indian startup ecosystem was, you can say that it was literally minting startups at an unprecedented speed, adding 46 startups last year, taking India's startup tally to over 90. India, as already discussed in this particular event, that we now have a distinction of being the third largest unicorn hub in the world. Startups in India are being established in various domains, not only in technology domain as commonly understood, but also in consumer, financial services, logistics, and of course, healthcare, which is the focus of, which is, the objective of this particular physiotherapy institute, which is being inaugurated today. So though e-commerce and financial services remain the favorite of investors, there are other domains in which startups are rapidly increasing. Of course, the Indian government has left no stone unturned to create a robust ecosystem to make it easy for the new age startups in the country. One of the most commonly talked about initiative is the Startup India initiative, which is a flagship initiative of the Indian government, started with the objective of serving as a catalyst to the startup culture in the country. Besides initiatives to ease the procedural hassles for the entrepreneurs, that means the ease of business, this particular initiative is also providing tax benefits to startups. Another scheme by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, commonly known as the Samriddhi scheme, is also providing funding support to startups along with extending Consumer Connect, Investor Connect, etc. Similarly, other schemes like, again, a very commonly talked about scheme is the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, which also it promoted startups by there was some disturbance. Sorry for it. Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, it gives loans to small and medium enterprises. And another very famous scheme is the Credit Linked Capital Subsidy Scheme, which has been designed to improve the availability of finance for new firms. So students, you can know about all these schemes at the various government websites, including the website of the NITI AAYOG. So with timely support from the government, which is very, very critical, the startups have become an important part of the Indian economy and a large source of FDI for the country. We can safely say that the startups are fueling the economic growth. Slide number 2, please. The innovative digital industries that we know are mostly IT or IT-enabled services, with a large chunk of these businesses being in e-commerce, fintech, SaaS, which is the software as a service, healthcare, or the edtech space, which also boomed like anything in the past few years. Most of the unicorns lie in this particular space. However, there are startups coming in other domains also, and therefore, we can safely say that these will be fueling the growth of digital innovative industries also, and therefore fueling the growth of the Indian economy as a whole also. So you can say that the government and the people alike are banking on these new innovative startups to take our economy forward. The wave of the new age startups in the country has mostly been fueled by startups started by young first generation entrepreneurs. This is extremely important for you to recognize and feel proud about, because these young first generation entrepreneurs are mostly from the non-business background. That means they do not belong to the traditional business families, but they had something in them. They had the most innovative ideas, which were aided by increased access to equity capital in the country, and of course the rapid growth of India's digital audiences, because as the penetration of smartphone and internet increased, India's digital audiences also increased by leaps and bounds. So the unicorns, as we know them, are most of them use the fuel or use the power of digital, and have raised more capital in the past decade than was possible in the earlier times. Another feature of the new age startups in the country is that older companies are now open to entering into exchange and strategic partnerships with startups. This was again a new feature which we see now, while supporting them with the various corporate specific new sources. So there is a win-win situation. These engagements are mutually beneficial. The established companies benefit in terms of the speed of operation and innovativeness, which the startups have aced, while the startups get to benefit from the resources available, because of course the new businesses are always having a dearth of resources. So these new age startups, as we know them, have definitely played a role in bringing about a change in society's perception of entrepreneurship. As all of the esteemed dignitaries before me were also addressing this issue, I would also like to say that the entrepreneurship skill, if you can call it as a skill or a mindset, and it is very, very extremely important that our youngsters have this. They have the courage to start their own businesses rather than looking only for jobs after they graduate from various institutes. You must be knowing that the owners of India's first unicorns have really become the India's startup heroes, like Jimmy Bansal, Sachin Bansal, and they have contributed hugely to the current image of entrepreneurship, which is regarded as cool and glamorous. Next slide, please. Yes. Another unique feature of Indian startups is growth in the country. The phrase jobless growth had become very important, and it was, this phrase was widely used in the newspapers and TV debates, and everyone was talking that yes, we can see the numbers in the economic growth increasing, but where are the jobs? People are not getting jobs. So I would like to say that, startups have a great potential of creating the jobs we were looking for. We all know that the country has lost a huge chunk of low-skilled jobs to automation in the country, because digital and automation has, penetrated really deeply as far as business enterprises are concerned. So the jobs created by the startup are filling that space and also paving the way for India to enter new areas to fuel the economic growth. Whether it is like battery production or electric vehicles, the government is supporting these areas with schemes and production linked incentives, and startups are fueling these areas, filling that space. The new age startups are innovators, and therefore the extent of innovation taking place and the pace of growth in the startup segment is massive in India. So you can, to prove this point, I can tell you the patent registration figures. The number of domestic patent registrations increased from 12,000 in 2015-16 to 25,000 in 2021. It is only because the startups are innovators that many startups are attaining the unicorn status very fast. Another important aspect about the new age startups is that these are slowly changing the demographic characteristics of today's businesses. So this is very interesting to know that around 44% of the recognized startups have women directors and a high number of women working in them, which was not there earlier. We all know that traditionally women, very few women occupied the plump high post in the business enterprises. So that is now changing, and startups have a huge role to play in that. Also, 45% of startups are in smaller cities, which work as brand ambassadors for local products. I'm sure that the management students must be aware of the fintech startups that have grown by leaps and bounds in the country. The presence of the public digital infrastructure facilities like the Aadhaar authentication and the unified payments interface have definitely allowed startups to offer a wide range of financial services. You can say that we are now witnessing an emergence of new financial products which target the more complex segments. For example, insurance. The global startup ecosystem is witnessing a shift as the world is increasingly realizing the potential carried by startups. We are gradually transitioning from the age of unicorns to the age of decacorns. Yes, you heard it right. Unicorn is again passé. We are now moving to decacorn. Next slide, please. And this is happening globally. To just give you this information, a decacorn is a company that has attained a valuation of more than 10 billion. As of January 2022, 46 companies the world over have achieved this status, and 4 Indian startups, namely Flipkart, Byju's, KTM, and Swiggy, have already added in the decacorn cohort. Now, an interesting aspect for you is that in the healthcare segment, again, the startups are booming in this segment, and it is poised for a growth, huge, massive growth also. The health tech, as we call it, market in India is estimated to reach $5 billion by 2023, growing at a compounded annual growth rate of 39%. And that 39% growth rate is post the pandemic impact. The digital shift, the use of better technology, the favorable government policies are all facilitating the growth of this market. You must have heard the names of startups like Innovator, which analyzes the healthcare data to provide actionable insight to healthcare providers, hospitals, insurance companies, etc. Also, other startups in this sector which have become very popular are PharmEasy, CureFit, Tracto, Healthify Me. They have great potential. Besides the healthcare segment, another important segment that we are seeing, noticing having a great potential for startup growth is the social commerce. Now, social commerce has made it possible to, penetrate to tier 2 and tier 3 markets and reach the low margin categories in the FMCG, the fast moving consumer goods. which large e-commerce platforms have not done so far. They could not reach that far, but these popular social commerce startups have done that. This segment of social commerce is therefore considered to be an extension of e-commerce by experts. A very, very famous example in this category is Meesho. Meesho is an app backed by Facebook and has become the first Indian social commerce startup to enter the unicorn club. Social commerce segment in India is fast growing with companies like SimSim, and then there is Glow Road or Bulbul also in the unicorn race. So we can see in near future having more unicorns from the social commerce domain. Similarly, we can also say that there has been a massive growth in space tech startups. And if you are really keen to know about it, you can see there are many websites which give information on which are the unicorns which have penetrated the space tech startups and the Indian-owned unicorns I'm talking about. The space tech startups have increased from around 11 in 2019 to 47 in last year. So all these sectors, healthcare, space tech, ed tech, are set to boom in the country in the years to come. Last slide, please. Pandemic had really adversely impacted the Indian economic growth. But of course, there is no way that the government should allow the existing startup ecosystem already created in the country to be compromised due to the impact of the pandemic. Hence, of course, there is a need to put concerted efforts to protect these startups. For this, the government should ensure that these startups are not deprived of availability of funds. So that should be very, very be an important focus of the government, and the Reserve Bank of India can also play a vital role in this regard. And the countries world over have suffered due to pandemic, and they have been taking steps like providing zero interest unsecured loans, interest and rent waivers, and other business support funds to startups. It's also critical that besides funding support, the startups themselves, we all know that there is a huge percentage of startups which actually fail also. So it depends on them to have a realistic business plan, realistic strategy, market-oriented strategy with achievable goals so that they do not struggle with cash flow issues. As far as access to venture capital investment is concerned, there's nothing to worry about, because it is heartening to see that according to industry bodies in India, there has been significant momentum actually, even after pandemic, with increased interest from funding agencies to invest in such startups. Besides, it is also important that government extends help whenever needed to these startups so that they are not forced to lay off at the time of crisis. Lastly, I would say that it is important that the government supports the startup ecosystem by suitable fiscal policy measures to boost the consumer demand, and definitely facilitate growth of startups by facilities for incubators. So, students, this is all from my side, and thank you so much for patiently listening. And I hope that this new initiative of Banarsidass Chandiwala Institute of Management, it succeeds like no other initiative. So my best wishes to everyone, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for sharing your experience and expertise with us. We certainly have had some very noteworthy takeaways from your detailed presentation. Thank you.